Listen, I thought I knew terror. Growing up on Vex Prime, where the acid storms could melt your carapace in seconds, I figured nothing could scare me. Boy, was I wrong. Turns out humans have a special talent for making everything seem perfectly fine while the universe tries to kill you. My name is Crix, and I'm what you might call a promising student at the Galactic University's Xenobiology program. 4 arms, chitinous exterior, compound eyes that can see in 17 different light spectrums, pretty standard for a Vexian. What wasn't standard was getting assigned to study Earth's most dangerous predators alongside a human named Marcus Webb. So, you're telling me, I clicked nervously, adjusting my translation device, that we're supposed to spend 3 weeks in something called the Amazon rainforest, cataloging creatures that could potentially end our existence? Professor Yarlix, a massive Gornian with tentacles that twitched when he was annoyed, which was always, slapped his teaching appendage against the holographic display. Correct, Crix. You, along with your study partners Zara from Centauri Beta and Flim from the Outer Rings, will accompany Human Webb on this expedition. Consider it your final examination. Zara, whose crystalline blue skin literally glowed when she was anxious, was practically a walking disco ball at this point. But Professor, the statistical probability of survival in Earth's equatorial zones is only 73% for non-adapted species. Exactly. Yarlix boomed, his voice echoing through the chamber, which is why you have a human guide. They're apparently adequate at staying alive in hostile environments. Flim, who looked like a walking tree branch with too many joints, creaked ominously. I've read the reports about Earth's nocturnal hunters. The jaguars, anacondas, poison dart frogs, and something called bullet ants. My homeworld's most dangerous creature is a mildly aggressive moss. That's when Marcus Webb walked into our briefing room, and I swear, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. Not because of any atmospheric control malfunction, mind you, but because this human had the most unsettling characteristic I'd ever encountered in any sentient species. He looked relaxed, completely, utterly, impossibly relaxed. Hey there. Marcus grinned, showing those weird white bone protrusions humans call teeth. Ready for our little camping trip? Little camping trip? Little camping trip? This human was talking about 3 weeks in a death world's most lethal biome like it was a pleasant stroll through a botanical garden. Mr. Webb, I managed to stutter. Are you aware that Earth's Amazon region contains approximately 4,000 different species of creatures that could kill us in ways we haven't even invented words for yet? Marcus chuckled. Actually chuckled, yeah. It's pretty intense out there, but don't worry. I've got everything under control. Been doing this for 15 years. 15 years. This maniac had been voluntarily entering nightmare forests for 15 years and was still breathing. Humans, I realized, might be even more terrifying than their planet. The journey to Earth took 6 standard cycles, during which Marcus regaled us with what he called fun stories about his previous expeditions. These stories included encounters with creatures called caimans, which were apparently living dinosaurs with anger management issues, and something called a fer de lance, which was a snake that could kill you just by looking at you wrong. Oh, and there was this one time, Marcus continued, munching on something he called beef jerky, which I suspected was dried alien flesh, when a jaguar decided to investigate our campsite. Beautiful creature. Really. Roughly 200 pounds of pure muscle and teeth. What did you do? Zara whispered, her glow now pulsing in what I recognized as the Centauri equivalent of hyperventilation. Made myself a sandwich. Marcus replied matter-of-factly. Figured if I was going to die, might as well die on a full stomach. And the jaguar? Flim creaked. Oh, it got bored and left. They're actually pretty curious animals, more afraid of us than we are of them. More afraid of humans than humans were of them, right? Because nothing says harmless like a 200-pound murder cat. When we finally reached Earth's Amazon basin, the assault on our senses was immediate and overwhelming. The humidity made my exoskeleton feel like it was wrapped in wet fabric. The air buzzed with the wings of insects the size of small spacecraft, and the sounds, sweet galactic core, The sounds, roars, screeches, howls, and clicks created a symphony of imminent death that never stopped, ever. Ever. Isn't this great? Marcus beamed, shouldering a pack that probably weighed more than Flim's entire body. Nothing like the Amazon to make you feel alive. Alive. Sure. For approximately 37 more seconds. Our first day was spent hiking to what Marcus called base camp, which turned out to be a small clearing next to a river that looked like it could dissolve organic matter just by proximity. The water was brown, moved in concerning patterns, and occasionally something large would create ripples that suggested the presence of aquatic nightmares. That's the Rio Negro, Marcus explained, setting up what appeared to be shelter made of fabric and optimism. Great fishing, if you know what you're doing. Fishing? I clicked frantically. You mean there are things living in that toxic-looking liquid that you voluntarily extract and consume? Best piranha I ever had came from this river. Marcus nodded, completely missing the horror in my voice. Piranha. I made a mental note to look that up later, assuming I survived long enough to access the galactic database. As the Earth's sun began to set, painting the sky in colors that would have been beautiful if they weren't the prelude to 8 hours of absolute terror, the forest sounds changed. The daytime cacophony of chattering and buzzing was replaced by something far more sinister. Low growls echoed from the darkness between trees. Something large crashed through underbrush nearby, followed by the sound of splintering wood. In the distance, a howl rose and fell, answered by another from a different direction. "Okay, everyone," Marcus announced, pulling strange devices from his pack. "Time to set up the night shift." Night shift. Zara's glow was now strobing in patterns that probably violated several interstellar light pollution regulations. "You mean we're staying here? During the dark period, when the predators are most active?" "Of course," Marcus replied cheerfully. "That's when the really interesting stuff happens. Really interesting stuff. Like getting eaten alive by creatures that had evolved specifically to turn visiting aliens into midnight snacks." Marcus began placing small electronic devices around our campsite, explaining their function as he worked. Motion sensors here, here, and here. Infrared cameras to monitor approaches from the north and east, and these. He held up what looked like metallic tubes, are sound deterrents. They emit frequencies that most large predators find annoying. Most. Flim's joints creaked nervously. "What about the ones that don't find them annoying?" "Well," Marcus shrugged. "That's what the backup plan is for." He patted something attached to his belt that I really hoped was not what it appeared to be. As complete darkness fell over the forest like a burial shroud, the true horror began. Every sound seemed amplified. Every shadow appeared to move. Every breath of wind through the leaves sounded like something large and hungry approaching our position. "So," Marcus said conversationally, settling into what appeared to be a portable chair, "anyone want to hear about the time I accidentally camped in a nest of bullet ants?" Before any of us could respond with the obvious answer, which was absolutely not, one of his motion sensors began beeping. Not the gentle, informative beeping of a friendly notification, but the urgent, panicked beeping that screams something large and toothy is approaching your location. Marcus glanced at a small device in his hand, nodded thoughtfully, and said, "Looks like we've got company. Probably a tapir. They're harmless, but curious. Probably. Harmless." Two words that, when used together by a human, seemed to guarantee the exact opposite. The beeping stopped. The forest sounds continued their ominous chorus, and somewhere in the darkness, something large was definitely moving closer to our camp. "Marcus," I whispered, all four of my hands gripping the edges of my portable seat, "are you absolutely certain it's this tapir creature?" Marcus consulted his device again. "Well, the movement pattern is consistent with a tapir. Similar weight distribution. Appropriate gait rhythm." He paused. "Of course, jaguars and tapirs have remarkably similar movement signatures when they're being stealthy." Jaguars. The 200-pound murder machines he'd mentioned earlier. "So, to clarify," Zara whispered, her glow now dim with terror, "we're sitting in the dark, in a forest full of creatures that want to consume us. And you're not entirely sure what's currently approaching our location. That's about right, Marcus nodded. Exciting, isn't it? Exciting. Sure, if your definition of excitement included the possibility of becoming a midnight snack for Earth's apex predators. The sound of breaking branches came from directly behind our camp, close enough that we could hear individual leaves being crushed underfoot. Whatever was out there was large, heavy, and apparently unimpressed by Marcus's electronic deterrence. Should we do something? Flim creaked, his bark-like skin practically vibrating with fear. Like what? Marcus asked genuinely. It's probably just curious. Most animals are more afraid of us than we are of them. There it was again. That completely backwards human logic that suggested multi-ton predators were somehow intimidated by soft, squishy bipeds with no natural weapons. A low grunt echoed from the darkness, followed by the sound of something large sniffing the air, investigating. Deciding whether we qualified as food or just interesting-smelling obstacles. Definitely a tapir, Marcus announced, relaxing visibly. You can tell by the breathing pattern. At that exact moment, as if the universe had a sense of humor and wanted to prove Marcus wrong in the most terrifying way possible, a sound erupted from the forest that froze our internal fluids, a roar. Not the grunt of a curious herbivore, but the deep, rumbling, bone-shaking roar of something that had never questioned its position at the top of the food chain. Okay, Marcus said thoughtfully. That's definitely not a tapir. The roar came again, closer this time, and was answered by another from the opposite direction. Then another. And another. Marcus? I managed to click through my terror. How many jaguars typically travel together? Usually they're solitary, Marcus replied, his relaxed demeanor finally showing the first cracks of concern. This is unusual. Unusual. Because apparently normal Earth predator behavior wasn't terrifying enough. The sounds of multiple large carnivores moving through the forest surrounded our camp. Branches snapped. Leaves rustled. And occasionally the glint of reflecting eyes appeared in the darkness beyond our small circle of light. Well, Marcus said, standing up and checking his equipment with movements that were perhaps slightly less casual than before, this should be interesting. Interesting. The human word for we're probably about to die horribly. And as if the universe wanted to emphasize the point, the power cell on one of our light sources chose that exact moment to fail, plunging half of our camp into absolute darkness. Oops, Marcus said. That's not ideal. Not ideal. The human talent for understatement was truly remarkable. In the darkness beyond our remaining lights, yellow eyes reflected our illumination, and the sound of heavy breathing suggested that we were being evaluated as potential meals by creatures that had never heard the word mercy. So, Marcus announced, reaching for his pack with movements that suggested he might finally be taking this situation seriously. Who wants to learn about advanced camping techniques? Advanced camping techniques. Right. Because what we needed at this moment was a tutorial on human survival methods while surrounded by hungry carnivores with glowing eyes and attitudes. Marcus pulled out what looked like a collection of metal cylinders and began arranging them in specific patterns around our compromised perimeter. These are flashbang deterrents, he explained calmly, as if discussing the weather instead of our imminent consumption. They create loud noises and bright lights that most predators find extremely unpleasant. Most predators? Flim repeated, his woody joints creaking with anxiety. What about the predators that enjoy loud noises and bright lights? Well, Marcus grinned, that unsettling human expression that showed way too many teeth. Those ones usually have bigger problems to worry about. Bigger problems. Because apparently being stalked by multiple jaguars in complete darkness wasn't quite problematic enough for this species. The eyes in the darkness had multiplied. I counted at least 6 pairs reflecting our diminishing light, positioned at strategic points around our camp. Whatever was out there had apparently attended the same tactical planning courses as galactic military commanders. Marcus. Zara whispered, her bioluminescent skin now flickering like a malfunctioning beacon. I'm detecting at least 7 large heat signatures surrounding our position. The coordination suggests pack behavior, which according to your own data, Jaguars don't exhibit. Marcus paused in his equipment setup. You're right. Jaguars are solitary hunters. He consulted his handheld device again, frowning slightly. These readings are different. The human word that meant everything I told you earlier was completely wrong, and we're actually in much worse trouble than anticipated. A new sound emerged from the forest. It's not the deep roar of jaguars, but something higher pitched, almost like laughter, if laughter could be produced by creatures that viewed us as mobile meals. Oh, Marcus said quietly. Oh, that's not good, not good. Coming from a human who considered camping in a predator-infested nightmare forest to be fun, this was approximately equivalent to a galactic emergency alert. What makes that particular sound? I asked, though I was fairly certain I didn't want to know the answer. Hyenas, Marcus replied, his relaxed demeanor finally showing genuine concern. Except hyenas aren't supposed to exist in South America. They're African predators that had somehow migrated across an entire ocean to attend our midnight snack buffet. Perfect. The laughing sounds grew closer, joined by what I can only describe as conversation. These creatures were communicating with each other, coordinating their approach, discussing tactics in whatever language carnivorous pack hunters use to plan dinner parties. So, let me understand this correctly. I clicked nervously, all four of my arms now gripping various pieces of equipment. We're surrounded by an unknown number of predators that shouldn't exist on this continent, exhibiting behavior patterns that contradict everything in the galactic database, while our protective equipment fails systematically. That's a pretty accurate summary, Marcus nodded, pulling out a device I'd never seen before. It looked like a crossbow designed by someone with serious anger management issues. What is that? Flim creaked, pointing at the weapon with one of his branch-like appendages. Tranquilizer gun, Marcus explained, checking its ammunition. Fires darts filled with powerful sedatives. Should drop most large mammals within 30 seconds. Should. Most. Two more human words that guaranteed the exact opposite of what they seemed to promise. The creatures in the darkness had stopped moving. The forest fell silent, except for our own breathing and the occasional snap of a twig settling. Even the insects had stopped their incessant buzzing, which somehow made everything infinitely more terrifying. They're planning something, Zara observed, her scientific training overriding her panic. Coordinated silence suggests preparation for a synchronized attack. Probably, Marcus agreed, positioning himself between us and the largest concentration of glowing eyes. But they're also trying to figure out what we are. We don't smell like their usual prey, and our behavior patterns are confusing them. Because apparently the key to surviving Earth's nightmare fauna was to be so bizarre that predators couldn't decide whether to eat you or adopt you. That's when Marcus did something that defied every survival instinct possessed by any sentient species in the known galaxy. He stood up, walked to the edge of our light circle, and began talking to the creatures in the darkness. Hey there, he called out conversationally, as if addressing old friends at a social gathering. I know you're curious about us, but we're really not very interesting. Just some tourists passing through your neighborhood. Tourists. He was conducting diplomatic negotiations with hungry carnivores by describing us as tourists. One of the creatures responded with what sounded like a questioning growl, followed by that unsettling laughter-like sound. Others joined in, creating a chorus of amusement that suggested they found Marcus's speech either hilarious or insulting. Yeah, I know we smell weird, Marcus continued, completely unperturbed by the fact that he was having a conversation with things that wanted to eat him. Different planet. Different diet. Probably wouldn't taste very good anyway. Marcus was attempting to convince apex predators that we'd make unsatisfactory meals based on interplanetary dietary differences. Is he actually trying to negotiate with them? Flim whispered, his bark-like skin rustling with disbelief. Appears so, I replied, watching this unprecedented display of human insanity. He's using what seems to be logical persuasion to discourage predation. The creatures fell silent again, apparently considering Marcus's argument. In that silence, I could hear my own internal fluids circulating, Zara's bioluminescent skin humming with electrical activity, and Flim's joints creaking with tension. Then, gradually, the glowing eyes began to withdraw, not disappearing entirely, but moving back into deeper forest, maintaining distance while continuing to observe our strange little group. "Well," Marcus announced, returning to his equipment setup, "that went better than expected. Better than expected." Because obviously the human had anticipated some other outcome from his impromptu wildlife diplomacy session. "What exactly just happened?" Zara asked, her glow stabilizing to a less frantic pattern. "Predators are curious about unusual things," Marcus explained, setting up what appeared to be a perimeter alarm system. "They were trying to figure out what we were and whether we represented food, territory competition, or just something interesting to investigate. And your conclusion was to have a chat with them?" "Pretty much," Marcus shrugged. "Most animals respond to confident, non-threatening behavior. Show them you're not afraid but also not aggressive, and they usually decide you're more trouble than you're worth. More trouble than you're worth." The human philosophy of survival apparently centered around convincing dangerous creatures that eating you would be inconvenient. Marcus finished setting up his defensive perimeter, which consisted of motion sensors, noisemakers, scent deterrents, and several devices whose function I preferred not to contemplate. "There," he announced with satisfaction, "now we can get some sleep." Sleep. The human actually intended to lose consciousness while surrounded by curious carnivores in a forest that existed solely to kill visiting aliens. "You're joking," I stated. Though I suspected he wasn't. "Nope. Need to be rested for tomorrow's specimen collection." Marcus unrolled what appeared to be a portable sleeping surface. "Don't worry, the perimeter system will alert us if anything larger than a monkey tries to approach the camp." Larger than a monkey. Because apparently, being approached by things smaller than monkeys was considered acceptable risk. "What if the system fails like our lighting did?" Flim asked, expressing the concern we were all thinking. "Then we improvise," Marcus replied, settling onto his sleeping surface with the casual confidence of someone who'd never encountered a problem he couldn't solve with human stubbornness. Improvise. The human survival strategy that apparently consisted of making things up as you went along and hoping for the best. Despite every instinct screaming that losing consciousness in this environment was equivalent to voluntary suicide, exhaustion eventually overcame terror. The combination of alien gravity, atmospheric pressure, and sheer panic had drained our energy reserves past the point of sustainable alertness. I must have dozed off. Because the next thing I knew, Marcus was gently shaking my shoulder and offering me something that smelled like it had been extracted from a chemical processing plant. "Coffee?" he asked cheerfully, as if we hadn't spent the previous evening negotiating with hungry predators. Coffee. Another human substance of unknown origin and questionable purpose. "What time is it?" I asked, noting that the forest had returned to its daytime cacophony of chattering, buzzing, and screeching. "About 6 a.m. local time. Prime specimen hunting hours." Marcus was already packing his equipment with movements that suggested he'd been awake for some time. "The predators are mostly resting now, so we can collect samples without too much interference." Too much interference. Because apparently some interference from creatures that wanted to eat us was considered normal operating procedure. Our first collection site was a fallen tree that Marcus claimed housed several species of insects, spiders, and small reptiles. To me, it looked like a wooden monument to everything that could bite, sting, or inject venom into unwary visitors. "This is perfect," Marcus announced, pulling on thick gloves that covered his arms up to the elbows. "Bullet ant colony, 3 species of poison dart frogs, and at least 2 varieties of venomous spiders." Bullet ants. Poison dart frogs. Venomous spiders. Marcus had just described our first stop as if he were listing the attractions at an amusement park instead of cataloging methods of agonizing death. "Are you certain this is safe?" Zara asked, her scientific curiosity battling with her survival instincts. "Define safe," Marcus replied, carefully lifting a section of rotting bark to expose a writhing mass of insects that looked like they'd been designed by someone with serious psychological issues. "Define safe." The human request that essentially meant nothing about this is safe. But we're doing it anyway. Marcus began collecting specimens with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd performed this task thousands of times. Each creature was carefully captured, cataloged, and stored in specialized containers designed to prevent escape, contamination, or unfortunate interactions between species. The key, he explained while gently coaxing a spider the size of a dinner plate into a collection tube, is to move slowly and avoid sudden movements. Most of these creatures only attack when they feel threatened. Two more human qualifiers that suggested significant exceptions to every rule. As Marcus worked, I noticed something that had escaped my attention the previous evening. His equipment wasn't just randomly selected camping gear. Every item served multiple purposes, every placement was strategically planned, and every action was performed with the precision of someone who understood exactly how dangerous this environment was. Marcus Webb wasn't just casual about survival in Earth's most hostile biome, he was supremely competent at it. The relaxed demeanor that had terrified us was actually the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing and had prepared for every contingency. "You've done this before," I observed, watching him successfully extract a poison dart frog without triggering its defensive mechanisms. "About 300 times, Marcus nodded, carefully placing the amphibian in a climate-controlled habitat container. Every major biome on Earth, plus a few off-world locations, 300 expeditions. This human had voluntarily entered hostile environments 300 times and survived to discuss the experience casually with terrified aliens. "Why?" Flim asked, creaking with what I recognized as genuine curiosity rather than fear. Marcus paused in his specimen collection. "Because someone needs to understand these ecosystems if we're going to preserve them. Every species we catalog, every behavior pattern we document, every ecological relationship we map helps us protect these environments for future generations. The human was risking his life repeatedly not for personal gain, but to ensure that dangerous creatures would continue existing for other humans to encounter. Plus," Marcus added with that unsettling grin, "it's fun. The human concept that apparently included voluntary exposure to everything the universe could devise to end organic life." Our second collection site was a section of riverbank where Marcus claimed several species of aquatic predators congregated to hunt terrestrial prey that came to drink. To my compound eyes, it looked like a buffet line organized by carnivores for carnivores. "Caiman nests are usually located in muddy banks near slow-moving water," Marcus explained, wading into the murky liquid that had looked dangerous from a distance and appeared absolutely lethal from close proximity. "Caiman?" Zara asked, though I suspected we didn't want to know. "Crocodilian reptiles. Living dinosaurs, essentially. About 6 feet of teeth, muscle, and bad attitude wrapped in armor plating." Marcus was now waist-deep in water that could have concealed creatures the size of small spacecraft. Living dinosaurs with bad attitudes. Because apparently Earth hadn't satisfied itself with merely dangerous predators and decided to preserve prehistoric nightmare creatures as well. Marcus began probing the muddy bank with a long metal rod, searching for what he claimed were caiman nests. Each probe produced bubbles, splashes, and occasionally, the distinct sound of something large moving through underwater vegetation. "Found one," he announced cheerfully, marking a location with a bright flag. "Mama's not home, so we can get some egg samples for genetic analysis." Mama's not home. Because obviously the absence of a 6-foot armored predator was temporary, and she would undoubtedly return to find strangers tampering with her offspring. As if summoned by Marcus's observation, a disturbance appeared in the water about 50 meters downstream. Something large was moving toward us with the purposeful navigation of a creature that had detected unauthorized activity in its territory. "Marcus," I clicked urgently, pointing toward the approaching wake. "Yep, that's Mama." Marcus nodded calmly, continuing his sample collection. "She's just checking us out. Caimans are very protective of their nests. Very protective. The human euphemism for will attempt to consume anything that threatens their offspring." The creature surfaced about 20 meters from our position, revealing a head that looked like it had been carved from ancient stone and fitted with teeth designed specifically for removing limbs from overconfident bipeds. "Beautiful specimen," Marcus observed, photographing the caiman while continuing to collect egg samples. "Probably about 12 feet long, judging by the head size. 12 feet of prehistoric murder machine was apparently Marcus's idea of beautiful. Human aesthetic standards clearly differed significantly from galactic norms. The caiman watched us with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire geological epochs, calculating whether we represented threat, food, or just temporary annoyance. After several minutes of mutual observation, it submerged and disappeared, leaving only ripples to suggest it had ever existed. "See?" Marcus said, wading back to shore with his samples. "Most predators are reasonable if you respect their space and don't act threatening. Reasonable predators." The human concept that suggested carnivorous dinosaurs were capable of logical negotiation. Our third and final collection site was what Marcus described as a night roost, where various species of nocturnal hunters gathered during daylight hours to rest between killing sprees. Vampire bats, several species of venomous snakes, and probably a few sloths, Marcus explained, setting up equipment to monitor the dark cave entrance. Should be a great opportunity to observe interspecies cohabitation. Vampire bats. Venomous snakes. Creatures that literally consumed blood and injected toxins, sharing living space in a cave that looked like the entrance to Underworld itself. "You want us to enter that cave?" I asked, though I was fairly certain I already knew the answer. "Just the entrance area," Marcus assured us, pulling out headlamps that seemed inadequate for illuminating whatever horrors awaited us in the darkness. "We'll set up observation equipment and collect acoustic data on roosting behavior. Just the entrance area." Because obviously the difference between being killed just inside a cave versus deep inside a cave was significant for some reason. As we approached the cave entrance, the sounds from within became audible: squeaking, rustling, and the occasional hiss suggested a population density that would make galactic urban planners nervous. "Remember," Marcus whispered, "move slowly. Keep noise to a minimum, and don't use flash photography. These species are adapted to darkness, and sudden light can trigger defensive responses." Defensive responses. The human term for aggressive attempts to remove your face. Inside the cave, our headlamps revealed a scene that would have impressed horror fiction writers throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of bats hung from the ceiling like living stalactites, their eyes reflecting our lights with malevolent intelligence. Snakes draped themselves over rocky ledges in positions that suggested they were sleeping lightly and prepared to strike at any disturbance. And somewhere in the shadows, things moved that we couldn't identify, but that our equipment registered as large, warm-blooded, and probably carnivorous. "This is incredible," Marcus breathed, setting up recording equipment with movements so careful they seemed choreographed. Interspecies cooperation in a shared roosting environment. The ecological implications are fascinating. The human ability to find scientific wonder in environments that existed solely to demonstrate new methods of terminating organic life. As we collected our final data samples and prepared to leave this monument to evolutionary hostility, I realized something that would have seemed impossible when we first arrived. We had survived. The odd not only survived, but successfully completed our mission. We had collected specimens, documented behavior patterns, recorded acoustic data, and gathered enough information to satisfy even Professor Yarlix's demanding standards. And we had accomplished all of this under the guidance of a human who treated Earth's most dangerous biome like a recreational area and its most lethal predators like mildly inconvenient neighbors. "So," Marcus asked as we packed our equipment for the return journey, "what did you think of your first Earth expedition?" What did I think? I thought humans were either the most foolishly optimistic species in the galaxy or the most magnificently adapted predators ever to evolve. Possibly both. Educational, I replied, which was the most diplomatic way to describe an experience that had redefined my understanding of survival, courage, and the thin line between bravery and insanity. "Great." Marcus grinned, shouldering his pack with the same casual confidence he'd displayed throughout our entire nightmare adventure. "Wait until you see what we've got planned for next semester. Because apparently this had been the easy assignment. As our transport lifted off from Earth's surface, carrying us away from the Amazon's green hell and back toward the relatively safe environment of space, and I reflected on what we'd learned. Humans didn't survive in hostile environments by being stronger, faster, or better armed than the predators around them. They survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and completely unable to recognize when they should be terrified. They set traps for creatures that could kill them, negotiated with predators that wanted to eat them, and slept peacefully in forests full of things that had evolved specifically to end their existence. And somehow, this approach worked. Marcus Webb had spent 3 weeks keeping 4 alien students alive in one of the most dangerous environments in known space, collecting valuable scientific data, and treating the entire experience like an amusing vacation. Humans, I concluded, were the most terrifying species in the galaxy, not because they were physically dangerous, but because they were completely, utterly, impossibly unafraid of anything the universe could throw at them. And that, more than any weapon or technology, made them the apex predators of their own planet and probably any other world they decided to visit. The universe had spent billions of years evolving perfect killing machines, and humans responded by setting up camping trips to study them. No wonder Earth was considered a death world. It wasn't the planet that was dangerous. It was the species that had decided to call it home.